Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time on Doctor Who, we had Mission to the Unknown. What was that one about?
Rather unusual thing, apparently a missing episode that had been recreated at a university. Basically, though, we see some people who apparently are from Earth, crash-landed on, Jungle Planet. How many times have we seen that before? But apparently they encounter our old friends or foes, the Daleks, who apparently have put together some kind of gigantic coalition of, lizard people and squid heads and things like that. And I guess we're about to find out where this is all going.
Almost, yes. We're not going to figure that out today. We're going to figure that out next time. Yes. That we watched the prequel or prologue to the Daleks' Master Plan, which they said it's been about 1,000 years since the invasion of Earth, and now they're going to do it again, just with some extra help this time around. But yeah, technically though, we're not starting the Daleks' Master Plan today. For some reason, they decided to put in one last set of episodes before moving on to that.
Huh.
So we have a completely, at least I assume, completely unrelated serial that we're watching today.
Okay.
But we will be back to... Yes, it is a 4-parter. We will be back to the Doctor and Steven and Vicky. So yeah, because last time we didn't have them at all.
Yeah, that seems kind of odd that there was literally no one from the original or the new cast in it at all.
Yeah.
Except the Daleks.
From what I saw, I think... I don't remember if I saw this or someone posted or tweeted it to me or something, but I think it's that the showrunner, who I think at this time is still Verity Lambert, just wanted to give the normal cast the week off. So just the entire cast and all the extras that they normally keep around, they all got the week off and brought in some new people just to do a one-off story. And that's how we got Mission to the Unknown, which was subsequently lost and then recreated because it's not like they have to recast the Doctor or the companions or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, today we are on to The Mythmakers, which is a 4-part serial. Again, presumably unrelated to the next Dalek serial. Also, it's completely missing, so we'll be watching it in recons.
Oh boy. I will say this. These are not quite as painful as the audios, but again... because of the sometimes very bad audio on these, and the fact that there's not subtitles so that we can hear what the people are saying through the bad audio, these are, again, somewhat of a struggle.
Yeah, they are definitely a struggle. I mean, I guess, the plus that it has on the audios is that they do have some visuals, even if very minor visuals, but actually, so this is serial number 3. And the next time that we have a complete, full serial is going to be serial number 6 of Season 3. So we have this week, then we have 3 weeks of Daleks, and then we have another serial, and then... So 5 weeks from now, we will have a complete serial.
Oh, joy.
Yeah. However, as it says here on our schedule, there are a couple episodes of the Daleks' Master Plan that are still there. I'm going to say 3 of the 12 episodes are still there.
Okay.
So, this is...
Buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride.
Yeah, it is. Now, I think after this, we might be able to, we might have a more consistent run of regular episodes, but I don't know, because even in the second, and I think even in the third Doctor's era, there's some episodes where it's they just lost these, and... So, I don't know. It might be like this for the next few months or so.
Yikes.
But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. So we might as well go ahead and get started on The Mythmakers. Here we go.
Trojan Warrior.
Patroclus was a boy! A boy? Well, he died like a dog, whimpering after his master Achilles. Come, let me send you to him where he waits in Hades. Let me throw the dog a bone or two.
They mispronounced Patroclus. They said Patroclus.
What? So anxious to be gone?
This is a very, like, intense and weird beginning to the episode.
In Homer, in the Iliad, it says he doesn't turn and run. It says he plies swift knees. Temple of Secrets. Donald Cotton. I don't think we've seen him before.
This shot is really weird.
Yeah.
Well. Hear me, Zeus! Descend to earth and save him! Zeus!
I was gonna say, they didn't notice the TARDIS there.
You must not kick a man when he is down. You have killed this poor fellow.
Oh, but in your name.
In my name, indeed. Get up! Get up, I tell you!
The Doctor has been mistaken for Zeus.
Yeah, and he's just right in there.
Dr. Zeus.
What is this? What is it you take me for? The father of the gods and ruler of the world.
I have many other commitments, you must understand.
And one of them lies here, in the camp of Agamemnon, our general. Oh, hear me out, I pray. For 10 long years now, we have laid siege to Troy, and still they defy us. Come.
I guess this is the point to insert that I have played Agamemnon. That's just painful.
Like your trumpet players might be dying.
Achilles!
Kind of put off by the Greek soldiers' outfits.
What must we do for the Lord Achilles?
Not exactly what I would consider historically accurate. Well, I mean, they're great, but they're just that nagging, don't look really accurate.
Well,
another is this ridiculous Trojan expedition. We've been here for 10 years. I want to go home. So I'm not getting any younger. You won't get any older if you're talking like that, brother or no brother.
You're the reason they're there, Menelaus.
Don't you want to see your wife again? Quite frankly, no.
Oh.
You must know I was half...
Hector is dead.
What? How did this happen?
This very day.
we're smarter
I
than this.
slew him after an hour or more of single combat.
It's interesting. They have like 5 seconds worth of whoever recorded their TV screen in the 60s.
Yeah.
But at that point, why even put it in?
Your temple, as you call it, has disappeared. Disappeared? Vanished into thin air.
Did the Trojans take it?
Maybe.
Small profit, quick return.
Alrighty, that's part 1.
All right. Now, before I forget, aside from the uniforms, which were, again, they're not disturbing, but you would think that the BBC would be a little bit more careful with that. My understanding is that Menelaus was supposed to be Agamemnon's younger brother. And the guy playing Menelaus looks much older than Agamemnon.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I understand what they're trying to do here. They're trying to portray Menelaus as being rather soft, but he was the king of Sparta, if I recall correctly. Agamemnon was the king of Argos. Odysseus is king of Ithaca. So he would have been a warrior. He would not have been at all like they portray him here. But then again, maybe they're trying to tell us in advance that maybe Homer got it wrong.
Maybe. Could be. I have to say this... Well, I mean, this is definitely a better quality reconstruction than Galaxy 4.
Which was... I've forgotten what... Completely, because, again, this was like 3 weeks ago. What was Galaxy 4?
Galaxy 4 was... they landed on the planet, and there were the Rills and the Chumblies and stuff.
Okay,
yeah.
Rills and Chumblies. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Don't worry. I think it should... That one should come out on Monday on YouTube.
Okay.
So... but yeah, like that one, like the audio quality was just horrible. Yeah. But this one, it's like I don't know who recorded this one, but they sound like they got a professional microphone.
But again, too, and this is going to sound very strange, maybe we understand this one better because we know this story.
Maybe.
You know, the whole Rills and Chumblies and can't even remember the women.
The Dravins, I think.
Yeah. But this one, you know, we are already familiar with the story of Odysseus and Achilles and Agamemnon and all the rest of them. You know, I'm sure we're going to see, you know, Ajax and all the rest of them here in a moment. I'm certainly hoping, with the name of that next episode, The Small Prophet, that they're going to meet up with Cassandra. Now, again, not only have I played Agamemnon, but your mother played Cassandra in the same play that I played Agamemnon. It's a wonderful anti-war play called The Prodigal by Jack Richardson. Most people have never seen it before. I had seen it back in the early 70s, and then we did it at our own theater, Theater a la carte, in the 1990s.
I was also thinking, I wonder what the thought process is when they create the reconstructions, because it almost seems like they're trying to create it in a way like it does still look like the episode, but honestly, I'd rather they just go in, just take the audio, and then take literal just cutouts of the characters, and then just drag the pictures just across the screen, and when someone's talking, they're just kind of bouncing up and down. Like I'm watching this, okay, I have 8 different ways I could edit this to be maybe a bit more visually interesting and stuff. It would look kind of weird, but still.
It did seem, and we mentioned it did seem like early on, in the first couple of minutes there, that some of those pictures of the Doctor looked like they had been cut out and then kind of pasted in.
Well, there was also one point, when they kind of do the wide shot of Achilles and Hector fighting, it looks like they took 2 people that were fighting on a green screen and then weirdly superimposed the fighting just onto just this field.
Yeah.
And there's one point when the Doctor walks out of the TARDIS, he walks out, clearly they took footage of him walking out and shouting at something, but the Doctor's not shouting in this episode. So it's just weird. And then the occasional time where, they actually have footage, someone must have filmed their television in the 60s, which is weird. And it's they put that in for 5 seconds, and it's at that point, there's no point in doing that.
Yeah.
It's only 5 seconds. That doesn't really add anything.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It just seems kind of weird. I have all these ways how I could improve these reconstructions and make them a lot more watchable. But
and I have to say, of the ancient Greeks, if you're not going to show the Trojan War, then obviously the next step up would be the Persian Wars, to show the Battle of Thermopylae or the Battle of Salamis or something like that.
Yeah.
Just how many soldiers do you think you can get inside? A whole regiment, perhaps? I think you've been very lucky to get even 2 medium-sized soldiers out of that thing.
Oh, 1 soldier.
I had something more lingering in mind. Yes, I dare say. I suppose some kind of ritual death, I presume. Sit down. Sit down!
This is also a rather odd portrayal of Odysseus. He's,
In my life,
he's
I have done
referred to
far.
as the wily Odysseus. He's very intellectual, not savage like this guy is.
And what are those conditions, may I ask? That you use your supernatural knowledge to devise a scheme whereby we capture Troy. I will give you 2 days.
So they need to make the Trojan horse.
But they're not supposed to interfere. But in this case, kind of like the burning of Rome, maybe they'll somehow mention it, and then Odysseus will come up with it. Now, I like the fact that Priam has the haircut of the time period, but this guy is very 1950s.
Don't pay any attention to Cassandra. She takes the gloomiest view. I suspect it's a kind of insurance, so that if things do go wrong, she can always say, I told you so.
Achilles!
They're saying Achilles instead of Achilles.
Oh, Diomede, I do not want your blood. Oh, it's Achilles, I see.
And must my lord Achilles be roused to undertake your death, adulterer?
Yes. Well, I'm prepared to overlook that for the moment. I assure you I have no quarrel with you.
You seem very fond of horses.
Fond of them, I should think we are. We worship them. A Trojan would do anything for a horse.
Oops.
Very one.
Yeah, Naomi. Come on, step lively now.
Stephen, what on earth are you...
What was that he called her?
You heard, didn't you? That was the name she called herself when we found her. And she recognized him, too. Since he's a Greek, what more proof do you need that she's a spy?
Great job there, Vicky.
God! Kill her! Kill both of them!
Alright, hang on, I gotta see who's playing Paris. Yeah, Barry Ingham. I know him from somewhere. I'll figure it out.
Alright, that's part 2.
Now, I will say, they have now moderated the character of Odysseus. You know, at first he's just, this literally slobbering brute. But now, having listened to the story, he's becoming the wily Odysseus that they talk about in the both the Iliad and the Odyssey. So,
I guess it is slightly a good thing that now Vicky has been caught, because she was about to spoil the whole Trojan horse thing. She's not really doing that well this time around.
But again, now see, I don't know exactly where they're going with this, but for those who are not familiar with the story of Cassandra, again, beautiful girl, and again, she's kind of played very shrewishly here. That's not really what she's normally seen as. But supposedly, if I recall the story, Apollo fell in love with her, but she rejected him. And so he said, I'm going to give you a gift. She said, all right, what is it? And he said, I will give you the gift of prophecy. You'll be able to foretell the future. So he gives her the gift of prophecy, but when she rejects him, he says, well, I can't take that gift back, but I will then now make it so that you will tell everyone the truth, but no one will believe you. That was her curse, is that she knew exactly what was going to happen. The dream about something being brought into the city and the whole works.
Yeah.
And then when the Greeks do end up building the Trojan horse, according to the story, she warned everybody, whatever you do not bring that in. Beware of Greeks bearing gifts. But they bring it in anyway, and of course the city falls, and she is taken captive by Agamemnon, who then takes her back to Greece.
Yeah, that is interesting. That it's like, it kind of like goes against the normal story where it's like, oh, this god falls in love with this woman, she just rejects him. Like, oh, okay, well, that's different.
Well, but to me, that's the beauty of that story, is that you always see, the male gods coming down and seducing women and getting into all this trouble. And to me, the story is Cassandra looks at this Apollo and says, yes, he's a gorgeous man and he is a god, but I'm looking at every time humans and gods have interacted, and look how bad that turned out. She said, I don't want to be part of that.
Yeah.
And so he says, all right, fine, curse you then. And that's what happens,
according
to the story. I'm beginning to understand now why they're calling this serial The Myth Makers, because they're kind of undoing all of the myths.
Yeah, that's true.
Since when have you given orders to the military? I am in command here.
Of everything except your sense.
I am at present officer commanding all Trojan forces, and I will not tolerate interference from a fortune teller of notorious unreliability.
How dare you! I am high priestess of Troy. I can get something.
Now, you just take that for a moment. Now pay attention, please.
It looks like paper. It would have at best been papyrus.
What is it? Well, what does it look like? A flying machine. Come along, come along.
Just made a paper airplane.
Carrying a company of soldiers over the walls and into Troy. How would we get them into the air? Catapults. Catapults? That sounds like a vulgar oath to me. Well, anyone can do it for that matter. I mean, even a child can operate it. I'm very glad to hear you say that, Doctor, because I intend to build this flying machine. Excellent, excellent. And you shall have the honor of being the first man to fly.
You hadn't called me Vicky.
Have you ever thought of a horse? Is that supposed to be funny?
Oh, now he's willing to do it.
Look here, I shouldn't be talking to you like this. What are you laughing at?
But you're not in the war, are you? You're far too young.
I'm 17, next birthday.
That's hardly any older than me.
She's supposed to be younger than 17?
between you and me,
I guess she was supposed to be Susan's age.
Well, what is this idea?
Yeah, that scene might have been like romantic or something if the guitarist just didn't have the most detuned guitar.
So they will be. I shall be there with my Ithacans.
Eh?
My Ithacans and the doctor, of course. That wasn't part of the plan. It is now. I've just thought of it. I'm standing no more nonsense from you, Doctor.
That gets him to the TARDIS.
That will not be necessary. I shall only get in the way.
I think you might at least have had the decency to have saved me some food. Oh. Thanks.
It's a funny way of wording it. Makes it sound like she just conjured food out of nowhere.
And woe to the house of Prior. Woe to the Trojans.
It's taking a bit late to say woe to the horse.
Well, got footage of that. That's part 3.
Now, sadly, although I read all of Shakespeare's plays back in college, I have completely forgotten the plot of Troilus and Cressida. But it's interesting, because I don't remember Priam having more than just the 2 sons, Hector and Paris. But that's entirely possible. Again, it's 50 years ago when I read it, so.
Yeah. I feel like this could have been cut down to 3 parts. When it was like, oh, we found the horse, and it's like, okay, so they'll all get out. The doctor will go grab Stephen and Vicky. They'll get in the TARDIS and they'll leave. And it's like, we got another 20 minutes to go through. It's like, what are we going to do?
Well, I am assuming that the battle for Troy will start. They'll figure out how to get Stephen out of the dungeon, and then they'll get into the TARDIS just before the city falls.
I guess.
Now, I wonder if those clips of the horse moving are from any of the, dozen stories of Troy.
Yeah, it might be.
The doctor said...
Couldn't they get back into the TARDIS at this point?
And you.
Theoretically.
If they find this thing...
You haven't got time. You've got to go now.
Don't worry. Everything's going to be all right.
Famous last words. What in the world?
I have no idea what happened there.
Yeah, again, green screened it and simply weren't able to get them moving. Yeah, I'd like to see the doctor climb down that rope.
This plan of yours, Doctor, is going to be a great success. Stay close to me.
I mean, the doctor has to realize that this is what was going to happen. I think that face is superimposed.
Might be.
Understand me.
You.
Can't you take you to your temple? Oh, come quickly.
Are we losing Vicky?
Well, it looks like.
In Troy?
I've gone far enough with you, my Lord Odysseus. You go adventuring on your own. Be off the door! Sing it! Come on, move!
It's time for that miracle.
Okay. Doctor! Doctor!
They left Vicky.
In Troy?
That's what it appears.
But there's nowhere to go.
We'll find somewhere.
Oh, Cressida, look!
Be careful, they may be Greeks.
It's my cousin.
Aeneas.
Yes. Aeneas. Oh, if only
Perfect.
he'd come sooner. Oh, my dear Vicky, I hope you'll be all right. There's your Mr. Child. Oh, yes, now there's Drax. What am I going to do? I must stop somewhere. But how? I've got to. Yes, I must.
So, Katarina is our new companion?
Yeah. So, you know how we've been progressively getting further and further with our companions? Let's just take a leap back for a sec. I didn't expect that. Did you expect that?
No, that was quite a surprise.
That really came out of left field at the end there. Like, now, okay, it has been a season. It's been a full season, so a full year for her time on Doctor Who. Still felt kind of fast, honestly. Maybe that's because, well, I don't know. I don't know. That seemed really fast, and maybe that's because, you know, when we lost Susan, to be fair, we spent so long watching that first season all the way through Dalek Invasion of Earth, so it took a while for us to get through that. This one, it's like we've had Vicky for a couple of months, maybe.
Yeah.
So, well, and then also just the fact that it's like, okay, so she's decided to stay behind in Troy that we just burned down. And it's like, you know, luckily, yes, Aeneas is here.
Okay.
But
have you forgotten the story of Aeneas?
Maybe.
Apparently, okay. See, that's why I said at the beginning when they first mentioned him, I said, okay, that's the crucial element that's going to come at the end. According to the story, Aeneas knew, I guess he believed Cassandra, I don't exactly remember, but he knew that Troy was doomed. So he grabbed his father and a couple of other members of his family, and they escaped out literally the back door of Troy, this passageway. They watched Troy burning in the distance. They knew they would never be able to go back there again. Now, according to the story, Aeneas wanders out of Asia Minor into Greece, across the Balkans into the Italian peninsula, where he becomes literally the founder of what would become the Roman Empire.
Right.
So Troilus and Cressida, obviously, are going to follow him to... Now, he wouldn't actually, because there's a difference of like 500 years between the founding of Rome and the destruction of Troy. But the ancestors of Aeneas, and I'm guessing Troilus and Cressida, are the ones who would later become the Romans, who would then create the Roman Empire. So that's what I think the average junior high school student would have known at this point, so that they would know that if Vicky and Troilus manage to hook up with Aeneas and his group, that they will be safe, because they do survive. And then, of course, Caesar, and I can't remember, I think it's Augustus Caesar, commissions the history of the Roman Empire, and he asks the great Roman poet Virgil to write it, and Virgil writes a story called the Aeneid, which is basically the story of the Odyssey of Aeneas from Troy to Rome, to the Etruscans, to the Romans, and the Latins, and the Greeks, and whoever. So, at least that's the way I remember it.
So basically, Vicky's descendants will now be Romans.
Yes.
And she has already been to Rome because she was there when Rome burned.
Yes.
Which, that's very classic time travel story.
Yeah.
But...
Well, no, actually, her ancestors would. Because, again... I don't know exactly when the founding of the fishing village that would become Rome was, but the Roman Republic isn't founded until like 709 BC, and Troy theoretically burns in 1200 BC. Homer doesn't write that story until about 800 BC, but still, there's a significant amount of time between the end of the Trojans and the beginning of the Romans. So it won't be Vicky herself.
Well, yeah.
But it will be, yes, her descendants.
And again, you know, you called Aeneas earlier on, but having Vicky be a part of that still comes out of left field, I feel like.
Yes.
It's like, I don't know, it's like, maybe it's like, okay, you know, she was ready to move on, and she decided, well, I gotta get out before the whole 12-part Dalek serial we're doing next, which there is no build-up to in this at all.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, and again, we have said this over and over again. 1 or 2 sentences, either in the last serial or a couple here, where, just where she... Again, the romance with Troilus was cute, but it seemed to happen very, very suddenly.
Yeah. He showed up suddenly, too. When it was like, oh, I made friends with Paris's younger brother. It's like, wait, did you? Was he a character? It's like, did we miss that, or was that because of the reconstruction? It's like, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seemed very weird. Because, yeah, you're right. Like, with Susan was kind of the best example because she had multiple episodes where, there was conflict between her and, like, the Doctor and stuff until eventually, you have then the 6-part Dalek Invasion of Earth that shows you, yes, it's time for her to stay behind. And ironically, I feel like she, like, stayed behind in a better world than this one. It's like, even if, yes, they are going to go meet up with Aeneas and go on, it's like, I don't know. It still seems weird, but it's like, yeah, even with Ian and Barbara, it's like, okay, well, they do set up at least there is another time machine that can go to specific places, so you can figure that out, and then they go off back to 1965. But here, it's like, okay, she has the slightest romance with Troilus, and then she just stays behind. And
now, theoretically, and again, 1 or 2 sentences could have done this. Theoretically, she would know the story. I mean, she knew the story of the Trojan horse and everything, so she should know Aeneas and the story of ultimately the founding of Rome, whether it was the Etruscans or whoever. But again, just one little sentence. When somebody mentions Aeneas, she says, Aeneas, he goes, oh yes, he's my cousin. If they had done that in the second episode or in the whenever they first met, or just something so that she would know, that she would be able to, if she stayed, when she finally realizes that she's in love with Troilus, she would be able to say, don't worry. And did she say that at the end? Everything's going to be all right. Everything's going to be fine. So she knows theoretically from the future that Troilus and Aeneas will survive.
I guess it's just the fact that this really came out of nowhere.
Yeah. And if before I forget, I would have liked, instead of Cassandra telling Odysseus what was going to happen, I wish the Doctor would have said, you are a horrible man, and you better enjoy your moment of triumph tonight, because for the next 10 years, your life is going to be made a living hell for what you have done. You will ultimately pay for this brutality that you've inflicted upon the Trojans. And that way, of course, Odysseus would have laughed that off because he would have never suspected it to be true. But somebody like the Doctor should have been able to say, you're a horrible human being, at least the way they portrayed him here.
Yeah. Well, I guess that could also be why the Doctor was so against the Trojan horse, even though he knows that he should know that this has to happen. Yeah. It's just, and maybe it's just that, not even like, yes, he knows it has to happen, but he doesn't like it. He doesn't like, what this is going to do to Troy, and he doesn't like that he has to be the one to give the idea.
Yeah.
Which is also weird because he was totally happy being the one that caused Rome to burn. Like, he was like, oh, I guess maybe that was me. Interesting. Yeah, it's like...
Now, again, he wasn't, though, forced to give Nero the idea. It happened completely by accident. But then, he was kind of amused by the fact that he had accidentally given it. But in this case, he was actually forced to say, I know how history happens, and so I have to, therefore, make it happen. Or maybe the rest of Earth's future doesn't happen, and then, it's like the meddling monk.
Yeah.
You can't change history, even if it means you have to, take a minor part in it, or in this case, a major part in it yourself.
Right. So, which is why he came up with the flying machines, which was just kind of weird, too. It's like, we're going to make giant paper airplanes, and we're going to launch them with a soldier on. And it's like, okay, that's very weird. I have to say, for a little while, this did feel like kind of every other historical we had, because like with the Doctor like walking out and them being like, oh, he's Zeus. It's like this really does feel like, I mean, it kind of felt like, I don't know, maybe a retread on Marco Polo, and maybe that's just because it was a reconstruction too. But I was just kind of sitting here like, all right, this is like, I don't know, we're not really doing like it's interesting and all, but it's like, okay, we gotta go save someone, and here's all these historical characters that are going to yell at the Doctor and stuff, and I don't know, it just kind of seemed like every other historical we had done. But then more towards the end with the Doctor's disgust at the Trojan horse and everything, and then just leaving Vicky behind. It's like, oh, okay, that does sort of differentiate this one a bit. Yeah. So,
but the other thing that I liked about it is that for the first maybe 5 minutes or so, it seemed like this was going to be almost a bad historical. But then all of the twists in there. I mean, making Menelaus a coward and making Paris a coward, and it's like, wait a minute, this is not the way the myth was supposed to come down to us.
Yeah.
So, again, they're taking the writer, and again, I can't remember what his name was. Cotton. Somebody Cotton.
It was like Donald Cotton, I think.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can go back and find that. Pretty early on. Let's see.
Woe to the house of Priam. Woe to the Trojan.
Make it a bit late to say woe to the horse. Just give them instructions to have it brought into the city.
Horse of Destruction.
Donald Cotton.
Donald Cotton. Yeah.
Because Dennis Spooner was the one who was writing most of the historicals. But again, I like the fact that they took a very well-known subject and yet were able to, I don't want to say freshen it up, but certainly twist it around in a way that even diehard historian or history teachers like us can look at that and go, well, that's an interesting take on it.
Yeah.
So,
let's see. We had the Doctor being mistaken for Zeus because he walked out of the TARDIS, which was funny. And again, sort of to talk about the way this recon was made. It's like, it's interesting, like, the choices that they make. Like, well, we have a shot of the Doctor walking out of the TARDIS. Like, okay, well, let's superimpose that into the background and have that as like, well, okay, you can do that. I'm seriously thinking, like, what they should have done is just taken, like, just stock pictures of all the cast and then literally just, like, move them around digitally like they're just little pictures on toothpicks that you're just, like a puppet show. But honestly, I think that could work, maybe even a little better than
yeah, so I'm guessing here. There weren't real telesnaps of this, because a lot of this did seem to be cutouts of the characters. And again, in several instances there, for example, in that last fight between Troilus and Stephen, that looked like their faces superimposed over other people's bodies.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been... now, Achilles was in the first fight, but it could be that they just took the shots from that first fight and then just superimposed Troilus' face on it.
Yeah.
So, I was going to say... Oh, right. Galaxy 4, the one we watched 2 episodes ago, people said that there actually was almost no telesnaps on that one, so they pretty much had to remake the entire thing from scratch. And I think someone said it was maybe made in the early 2000s, and then it was only later, in the 2010s, that they actually found the 3rd episode. So they had the 3rd episode, but they already had all 4 episodes in Recon, so they couldn't even take from that in order to recreate everything. So,
well, I guess watching it however we can't complain too much, although we will.
Yeah, we definitely will. That's kind of our jobs, but anyway, but yeah, it's just kind of interesting to see, especially too because the Recons have been so different from Marco Polo, which was a pretty good recon, honestly. But everything else, now we're doing different methods, and even if there's only 5 seconds of footage, they're being sure to put that 5 seconds of footage in.
Yeah, that seems kind of weird to do that.
Yeah, especially because it's very obvious that this is someone who, I don't know how they did this, but someone in the 1960s, I assume, who just filmed their television. Which, if that's the case, how do we not have the entire episode at that point? Which, at least that would be slightly better than a recon.
Yeah.
Only slightly. We had the whole thing about return to the temple so that we can do a miracle, but then that was gone. It's interesting that they did... So, Paris is just out and about, doing his thing, looking for Greeks, just finds this blue box, and he's like, huh. Alright, well, everyone grab hold, we're taking it back. And it's just like, well, okay, that's interesting.
But again, I mean, if you think about it, if you were from that time period and you saw a small piece of architecture like that was so completely out of sync with the rest of the world at that time, you would have it taken back so that, your priests and your high priests and, Cassandra and other people to examine it and say, we have no idea, it's obviously come from the gods, or, because the Greeks were not capable of building something like that, or anybody else that they would have known at that time. So it would have been a curiosity. You would have needed to find out, if this was what they call a godsend.
Yeah. We also had Stephen first mentioning the Trojan horse and the Doctor kind of getting away from the idea, but now we know that was because he just did not want to try to suggest that he I guess his mindset was, well, that does have to happen, but I want them to think of it themselves. Yeah. I don't want any part of it.
Now, there is another way of looking at that, though, is that although the story of the Iliad is one of the foundational stories of Western civilization, we have absolutely no proof that any of it is true.
Yeah.
Because it was, again, we don't even know that Homer was a real person, but whoever wrote this story down wrote it 400 years after it happened.
Yeah.
That would be like us today being the first people to write about the Jamestown colony in 1607. That's the span of years between there. Now, I realize in the ancient world, very little happened over 400 years, whereas, we've gone from the Pilgrims basically to, men on the moon.
Yeah.
But still, there is no contemporary account in any civilization of the Trojan War. What we have assumed is, because of where Troy was located, and they actually mentioned it in here, I was really glad they did that, the war wasn't really about Helen. I mean, that's the great story, that Helen and Paris fall in love, and Paris kidnaps her, and Menelaus goes to his brother and says, my honor has been besmirched. And so, but the whole point was Agamemnon, who was the leader of the Greeks, knew that Troy, sitting there, I can't remember if it's the Bosporus or the Dardanelles, but right there at the entrance to the Black Sea, they were controlling all trade between Asia and the Greek world. And so Agamemnon says, in order for us to become a much wealthier and a much stronger, united Greece, I guess, if you wanted to, then we have to make sure that the Trojans go away, because we need to control the trade with the Black Sea and the Aegean Sea. So yeah. I like the fact that they mentioned that, although, again, I don't know how many other people, especially young children, would have caught that at the time.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting with saying, we don't really have... I mean, with you saying, okay, if we wrote a story about the Jamestown colony, it's not just that, but it's also, what sources would Homer or whoever wrote this, what sources was he using? Or was this just a story that had just been passed on? And It's okay, I'll write this and I'll put stuff in it to make it read cooler.
Well, of course, that was... most history in that time period was passed down through oral tradition, because very few places, other than like Phoenicia and the Egyptians, had even a very basic form of writing. Yeah. But people have always pointed out that there are anachronisms in Homer's retelling, because he doesn't have all the facts. All he knows is this story, and so he was trying to write a story that his contemporaries would understand. So, it would be like us saying, well, the Jamestown settlers were able to defeat the Powhatan Indians because they had, repeating rifles or, 6 guns. That's something that modern people would understand.
Yeah.
But of course, that couldn't have happened because they had single shot muskets and things like that. So the veracity, the truthfulness of Homer's account has always been questioned. But what is not questioned is supposedly the great heroism of both the Greeks and the Trojans at this. And again, it was this whole story that it lays the foundation for Western civilization.
Yeah. Let's see. I wrote down prisoner. I think that was about Stephen. And also just, again, this is now our new running joke, is that nobody's ruses are holding up anymore. Ever since, when did that start? It was another historical. I can't remember. Oh, it was the Crusade, when no one's ruses were holding up. And pretty quickly, the Doctor drops the whole Zeus thing, and pretty much immediately too, when Paris brings in Stephen, and both Stephen and Vicky immediately drop the story and call each other by their real names, and it's like, come on, guys. Because the Doctor was really good about it when the Greeks caught Stephen, they brought him in, and it's like, oh, do you know this guy? And the Doctor's like, nope. He's just a guy. I mean, I don't know. I might be Zeus, but I don't know everything. So,
and by the way, when the Doctor said, "Take him back to my temple, and I shall strike him with a thunderbolt," what was he talking about? Was he just making that up to get them back to the TARDIS? Because he has. I mean, as far as I know, he has no weapons.
Yeah, I think the best I can think. Well, because they also say oh, there was this blinding flash, and then Zeus appeared. It's like, the TARDIS doesn't really do that. It just sort of fades into existence. The closest thing is the light on top of the TARDIS will flash, so maybe it's that. And I was kind of thinking okay, well, maybe get back to the temple and I'll strike him down. And it's like, well, get back to the temple, they'll get in, and are they going to take off? But they don't have Vicky at that point, unless they were thinking. I guess at that point they didn't know Vicky wasn't in there. They probably figured she was still in there. Yeah. So,
and again, you have to. Again, this is going way too deep, but you have to understand that both the Greeks and the Trojans at that time had never seen an electric light. So to have something that could blink on and off like that without being an actual flame would have astounded them. And again, it had to be something from the gods because humans were incapable of that at that time.
Right. Let's see. I did like Priam and Paris, just the constant disbelief of anything Cassandra said. It was honestly kind of funny, because she was always going off on the doom of Troy and everything, and just everything she would say, and just be like, oh, look, this is more proof that I'm right, and they're just like, whatever. I don't know. Let's go look at the horse. So,
and again, the story is that she was not going to be believed, but I'm really surprised at how nasty they made her in this, because from what I remember of the story, and especially in the production of The Prodigal that Mom and I did, Cassandra is a very very nice person. She's reconciled to the fact that she's going to try to tell everybody the truth, but she understands that nobody's going to believe her.
Yeah.
And so she, again in the story, it begins with Agamemnon's return back to Greece, and Cassandra has basically become a friend. And she said, and he says, "Can you tell me what's going to happen now that I'm home?" And the first thing Cassandra does is look at him and say, "I think you're going to find your wife is a greater woman than the one you left." And of course, what he finds out is his wife has been ruling Argos since he left, and when he comes back, she has absolutely no desire to give up ruling. She said, "You've been gone. I've taken care of the country. And as far as I'm concerned, this is my country now." And then that, of course, sets in motion the whole showdown between Clytemnestra and Agamemnon with Aegisthus and Orestes and Electra and all the rest of them. It's a great story, both in the original Greek and in the retelling.
Maybe it's just that in this, because she's constantly dealing with her father and her brother, it's just the pure family frustration of, I have been telling you this stuff for 30 years and no one believes me, and it's like, and she's just so frustrated, and they're also dismissing her as a family member would, just like, you're on, you're saying all that stuff again, whatever. You're always saying the doom of Troy, anyway. And also, like, I understand Paris, especially when he's like, I got a Greek who's, stroking my ego, it's like, it's all great there, so he's just happy to have that. Priam, I thought was kind of weird that just his constant trust in Vicky, I thought was kind of weird. Like, at every opportunity, he was like, let's bring her back up here. Clearly, she was telling the truth, and it's like, you don't have to jump right to it, even if you don't believe Cassandra. It seems kind of weird. Yeah. So,
they're kind of smoothing that over, I think, for Vicky's exit more than anything.
Yeah, I guess. And we had the flying machine, which was interesting. So he just made a paper airplane and was like, okay, this will work. And then as soon as it's like, all right, well, you'll be the first one to fly over there. And it's like, okay, let me rethink.
But now, was it the monk or the doctor who talked to Leonardo da Vinci? So I thought I heard somebody talk to Leonardo da Vinci. And although the paper airplane is not da Vinci's design, he did come up with this idea of basically a rigid wing, which if he had not tried to flap the rigid wing, it would have worked a lot better. Because what Da Vinci essentially designed was what today we call a hang glider, and that's what the doctor's saying here. If you can find a way to launch this fixed wing object, it will at least glide over the wall where your men can then, I don't know, drop fire down into the city, or if you can get a couple of them inside, as long as we open the gates, that's all we need.
Yeah.
So I kind of understood that, and again, it is somewhat far-fetched, but trying to avoid the Trojan horse, that's all he could come up with.
Well, it would also be interesting, like, for the Trojans, when they just sort of look up and they just see soldiers flying over, and then either dropping down and fighting, or dropping fire or something. It's like, that has to be terrifying.
Yeah.
Pre any form of any sort of flight, and also pre-AD or anything. Like, we're so far back in time, and to have men flying over, like, that would be scary.
And when the doctor mentioned the catapult, I know the Romans had them. The Romans had siege engines, but I do not remember catapults being used by the Greeks and the Trojans, because it seems to me that the Greeks would have been able to breach the walls with catapults if they had had them. And again, Odysseus said something about, it sounded like an insult, and I'll call Agamemnon that the next time I see him. But it kind of struck me that he knew what a catapult was.
Yeah.
Now, again, don't quote me on this, because it's been so long since I've taught this. I think, like the Assyrians or the Akkadians, one of those Mesopotamian groups had some siege engines, but again, I don't know that they actually had a catapult. I think they had the big, what they would call the siege towers, where they would go right up to the walls of a city, and that way they could have the men climb up and try to get over the top of the walls that way. But again, the idea of catapults in 1200 BC sounds wrong to me for some reason.
Well, I was also thinking too, because it's like, when you think of a catapult, it's like, okay, so you've got, pretty much the giant spoon, basically, and you launch, and it's like, okay, you're going to get a flying machine on that? And it's like, then I kind of thought, like, well, what if you had, like, a giant, like, almost like a crossbow to load up and then shoot that over, and that might actually work a little bit better.
Yeah,
but
and by the Middle Ages, they did have those. Can't remember what they're called, but yeah, they did have the basically gigantic crossbows where they would literally fire logs, sharpened logs, to hit the walls and try to break them down too.
Yeah. I can't remember what those are called.
Yeah, I can't either.
Yeah.
I know there's besides the catapult, there was a trebuchet, but I don't know if that was the giant bow and arrow or not.
Maybe it was that.
Could be.
I don't
know. Too long. I've been teaching modern history for 8 years now, so I'm tending to forget a lot of that stuff. Plus my advancing age.
I wrote down just the climax in general, which now that we've watched all 4 episodes, I'm like, okay, I understand why this is 4 episodes and not 3. But for a while there, it's like, at the end of episode 3, and it's like, okay, and they're in, and it's like, okay, we're done. Then it's like they're going to get out, they're going to attack. We'll see a couple people die. We'll hop in the TARDIS and we'll get out of here. But it does make sense, that they waited it out because they had to wait till like sunrise and everything before they actually got out of the horse and everything, and then to make sure that there's enough time for Vicky to have an actual exit. You do have to dedicate that amount of time. So overall, it does work for being 4 episodes.
Again, one last little thing. If I recall correctly, once the horse was brought into the city and the doors were closed, Priam announced a great celebration. And what happened, according to the way I remember it, was that the people had a great celebration, and there was lots of, feasting and drinking and dancing and drinking and singing and drinking, and there was just drinking. But basically, all of the soldiers relaxed for the first time in 10 years. Everybody got drunk, and then when everybody fell asleep, that's when Odysseus and the men came out. But I didn't see any of that in here, and maybe they kept that, out of the picture because it was basically a children's show. But there should have been more of the Trojans being so grateful and so relaxed that the war was over, that's why it was much easier for Odysseus and his men to get in and then open the doors.
Yeah, maybe. And then I guess sort of the last thing is Vicky and Troilus going off to live their own life. Also, it was funny when Troilus was like, "Oh, I'll be 17 like next month," and then Vicky's like, "Oh, well, you're not much older than me," and we both sort of just look. It's like, is that how old they are? It's like I figured they were kind of older, but I guess since Vicky was supposed to be our replacement for Susan, it makes sense that she would be around the same age. Although it would have at least pegged at least 17, maybe 18 or 19.
Yeah, so. And of course your question would be, why would a 15 or 16-year-old be sent off on that space mission that she was originally on? But again, if she had 5 or 6 PhDs by the age of 12, then that wouldn't really matter. But yeah, I suspected that she was older. I thought she would have been in her at least early 20s.
Yeah, so...
Now, I'm sure the actress was, but I didn't know that Vicky was supposed to be that young.
Yeah. Because now I think, and this is going all the way back to The Rescue, which was months ago now, but I think her father was on that mission with her, but it's just that her and the other guy were the only ones that survived.
Yeah. That could be,
so, but yeah, that is the end for Vicky, and now we have Katarina.
Katarina.
Yeah.
A girl from 1200 BC traveling into the nightmare of the Daleks. That'll be fun.
Yeah, this girl who can't really say too much. Like I don't even know if she had a full sentence in this episode. We don't really know much about her. Pretty sure the doctor called her Katrina, not Katarina, and it's like, all right, Daleks, 12 episodes of it. So,
and again, as a serving girl, she theoretically would not have even have been that educated. I don't want to say that she was a slave, but as a servant of the royal family, I'm not sure what she brings to the next season.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. I'm pretty sure that she is not around when the Doctor regenerates. So, if I could make a prediction, I will say that she is going to be a placeholder companion until we get someone else.
Yeah, maybe she and Steven will leave together sometime.
Yeah, maybe. Man, that's gonna... I mean, it felt fast that we've already lost Vicky. If we lose Steven, anytime soon, that's gonna be really, really fast. Like I'm so used to in modern Doctor Who, companions will stay on at least a season. That's about 13 episodes worth. And then, most recently, the last 2 companions have had, 2.5 seasons each. So it's the fact that we have just churned through so many companions so quickly, and we haven't even switched doctors yet. It's very odd.
Very disconcerting.
Yeah. Well, next time around, we are starting the big one, the big one of the first Doctor, which is the Daleks' master plan. We're going to be splitting it up into 3 videos, which means 4 episodes per video. I think of which only 3 episodes are still intact. and the rest are recons.
We'll do our best.
Which is weird that they lost Dalek episodes. Yeah. Like those have been the only complete serials so far, or like at least they've all been complete. So that is kind of odd that this one is heavily missing episodes. So
you would have thought that. Again, I'm assuming they're written by Terry Nation. That he would have had copies. That his estate could have put out. But
I think I saw that Mission to the Unknown was also supposed to be like. It was supposed to be almost maybe like a backdoor pilot for a completely separate show about the Daleks, just completely devoid of anything Doctor Who. Don't know how that would have worked as a show,
because there's literally nothing redeemable about the Daleks.
You really can't turn them into protagonists, so clearly it didn't get off the ground. But I don't know how that would have worked, or maybe it was supposed to be. Terry Nation was just going to create a new show where the Daleks were the villains and have, where I guess they were just constantly the villains. Every episode is them, but we do have like maybe a ragtag group trying to defeat them. Yeah. But that never went anywhere, so...
Yeah, obviously.
But yeah. You got anything else?
I'm ready for lunch.
Yeah, I am too. So, with that all being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who classic reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.